Now, joining us in the studio to give us his insights into the current situation with North Korea, we have Dr. Bong Young-shik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies. Welcome back, Professor Bong.
Pleased to be here again.
Now, reports are emerging today that Pompeo is finally going to Pyongyang next week to have follow-up talks with North Korea. It's taken a little longer than expected, seeing as the Trump administration had previously said that it would happen last week. Why do you think there has been this delay?
Well, there's no incentives for Pyongyang to rush the whole process. If there will be a follow-on meeting between senior official of the United States government, which is the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and his counterpart in North Korea, North Korean government has to show more genuine gestures and carry out concrete steps toward the denuclearization, which will undercut North Korea's bargaining chips vis-a-vis the United States. So it makes sense for North Korean regime to take as much time as possible by manipulating the joint statement outcome of the Singapore summit meeting between Kim Jong-un and Mr. Donald Trump of the United States, which it lacks details. So the main purpose of Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang is to review the details of the what must have been agreed between the two leaders in the Singapore summit meeting. But you cannot really say that the United States and North Korea have just wasted the previous 2 weeks after the summit meeting on June 12th, because both leaders agreed in Singapore that the entrance of the process of denuclearization of North Korea would begin with building trust, eliminating the concern for hostile policy from either side. So in order to fulfill the first preconditions for moving the ball in the right direction, the United States decided to suspend joint military exercises with South Korea, starting with the Fall Eagle exercise scheduled this August, to show that the United States would not pose any hostile policy toward North Korea as long as North Korea does not engage in provocative actions or continue the development of the intercontinental ballistic missiles and the nuclear warheads. And in return, Pyongyang began the process of repatriate the remains of the fallen American soldiers during the Korean War, as a sign of the building trust with the United States. The exact number has not been confirmed, but it has been reported that about 158 remains have been prepared to be sent back home to the United States by North Korea, and which fits nicely to the mantra of the armed forces of the United States, that no one is left behind. So not everything has been wasted or delayed.
Sure, so taking steps to build trust, I guess. But then what can we expect from these talks if Pompeo does actually go to North Korea next week? What can we realistically expect to come out of them?
It's like, analogously speaking, trying to tighten the bolts. As I said, the joint statement notoriously lacks the details about the roadmap to be applied to both Pyongyang and Washington. Pyongyang wants a security guarantee and the economic opportunity to build national economy. And United States, of course, wants a CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. So both parties will work on making the spirit of the joint statement in details so that there will be concrete steps to be made by both sides. And for the United States, it is important to reap some kind of early harvest so that the president, the White House can demonstrate to the constituents and the politicians that the summit meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore was not a big failure. Progresses are being made.
So we're not sure who Pompeo is going to meet when he goes there, but I guess we have to watch out for who he is going to meet. It could be Kim Yong-chol, who he's met with several times in Pyongyang and in New York as well. Well, there's a possibility, apparently, it could be Ri Yong-ho as well, the foreign minister. Does it depend on who? Do you think it matters who he talks to? Does it show? Will it Could we read some signs into what North Korea intends to do by seeing who they put forward?
I personally wouldn't put too much emphasis on who Secretary Pompeo's counterpart will be, because what is most important is the strategic decision, which can be only made by the Supreme Leader, Mr. Kim Jong-un. So whether it will be Kim Yong-chol again or Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho, he will deliver the decision already made by his boss, Kim Jong-un. So what is more important is the content of the agreement, which will be made by Secretary Pompeo and his North Korean counterpart. But if it will be Ri Yong-ho, then it shows that that North Korea is going to use the previous agreements on North Korea's denuclearization, because Foreign Minister has been the main government branch during the period era of the six-party talks. So if Ri Yong-ho will be the counterpart of the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, then that can be read as a sign that North Korea is going to use at least part of the previous agreements on denuclearization.
Donald Trump said at a rally on Thursday that the North Korea denuclearization process cannot be rushed, and he compared it to cooking a turkey as such. But compared to previous comments, there's quite a step back, quite a turnaround in his thinking. It seems that way. Do you think it shows that he now finally understands that dealing with North Korea is tricky and it will take time?
I think he had already understood that denuclearization of North Korea was, using his own word, a huge challenge to the United States. So he realized, I think, that important decisions could not be really made in the summit meeting with Mr. Kim Jong-un in Singapore. And it seems like President Trump has realized that the United States possesses a great deal of advantages because time is not really on the side of North Korea. The statement by President Trump and the Secretary Pompeo that we do not need to rush, we don't have any set timetable, we have to treat the denuclearization of North Korea like a turkey in the stove, should not be interpreted as changing position of the Trump administration. Rather, it could be a very stern message to Pyongyang, kind of warning that as long as you will not make early concrete steps toward denuclearization as agreed in the summit meeting in Singapore, time is running out for you to turn to economic development. You have to give up at least part of your nuclear missile capabilities and facilities. Otherwise, all these existing economic sanctions, which make North Korean economy continuously bleed, will remain in place. So you have to make your decision early if you want to make important change you want.
Before we go, I wanted to talk about something else as well that's happening in South Korea. So the South Korean government has been holding talks with North Korea over various other kind of joint ventures, such as reconnecting rail and road networks. Both talks have ended with agreements to carry out surveys and such. What does this mean, and what kind of cooperation can North Korea and South Korea actually do in the short term, and especially considering that there are still economic sanctions on North Korea?
The answer to your question is directly related to our previous conversation on, dealing with North Korea's denuclearization is like, cooking turkey in the stove. Because as long as North Korea will not make concrete steps of denuclearization, economic sanctions will not be removed. As long as the economic sanctions will be in place, it is very limited for South Korean government or any other government to engage North Korea economically. Vice Minister of the National Unification made this point in his interview with a reporter that this is why we need to take kind of two tracks toward North Korea in terms of economic cooperation. We focus on what we can do, assuming the economic sanctions remain in place. like the joint surveys of the forest, right? Mining or railroad reconnection projects. But we also prepare for major projects with North Korea. But the precondition, absolute precondition, is the UN Security Council resolutions, which prohibits North Korea's exports and the joint ventures in operation inside North Korea have to be changed. So it is all up to North Korea's decision of denuclearization. Otherwise, then any economic projects with North Korea will continuously remain in a lowest level.
So exactly. So there is some criticism saying that North Korea hasn't shown any steps towards denuclearization yet, but these kind of talks and plans for projects eases pressure on North Korea. What would you say to those kind of criticisms?
Well, I mean, by dangling very substantial package of important economic benefits in front of North Korean leadership is very important. That is the part of the maximum pressure and maximum engagement strategy toward North Korea for the purpose of the denuclearization of North Korea. But it is up to Kim Jong-un regime to decide whether it is going to rely on provision of economic prosperity to its people instead of relying on nuclear weapons and missiles in order to guarantee its survival and security. North Korean government has already embarked upon massive construction of casino and five-star hotels in Wonsan Galma area. But in order for the project to be complete, you need electricity, you need cement, you need to connect the railroads so that the outsider travelers will come and spend money inside that resort area. It is all hinged upon lifting economic sanctions in exchange for North Korea abandoning at least part of its nuclear missile capability. And Kim Jong-un has not really made that bold decision yet.
Well, thank you for keeping a watch on the situation in North Korea, and we appreciate your insights.
You're welcome.